Okay, we will call this meeting to order. This is the December 17th meeting of the Newcastle Planning Commission, December 17th, 2025, held a week early because of Christmas and our Christmas Eve being our normal date. I'm Charlie Gatzik, the chair. Would you all join me in a flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Director Fitzgibbons, will you call the roll?
I certainly will. Okay. We have 7 commissioners now. Start with Commissioner Keck.
Present.
Commissioner Lowe. Commissioner Beeson.
Present.
Commissioner Van Atta.
Here.
Commissioner Blocker.
Here.
Commissioner Troutman, Vice Chair Troutman.
Here.
And Chair Gatzik.
Here. You have the agenda before you. Do you see any need for any changes or amendments? Okay. Seeing none, we'll consider the agenda approved, and we'll move to approval of the minutes. First being the minutes of our October 22nd meeting, which turned out to be a non-meeting because we didn't have a quorum, and that's all the meetings really state. I guess we'll take these one at a time. Anybody have any changes to the minutes of the October 22nd meeting? We'll consider that one approved. Next is November 19th meeting, and I actually have a change to that. There is a line here, and I sent this by email to our to staff, where it said the commission introduced Chris Beeson as a new member of the Planning Commission, which is a little bit premature. But, well, if you would replace that with the chair reported that Chris Beeson, a construction industry executive, has been appointed to the Planning Commission and will attend the December meeting. Are there any other changes or amendments to the minutes of that meeting? Okay. Let's take a vote on that since we made a change. Would somebody make a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes.
I second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. Unanimous. Okay, that brings us to our public comment period. If there's anybody in the audience who would like to comment, now is your opportunity.
Thank you, Chair Gadzik. Robert Clark from Hazelwood and mayor for a little bit longer. I just wanted to come, like I came to the CAC last week, I wanted to come thank you all for your efforts as planning commissioners. It's been, I know you do a lot of work, even more than the council, truthfully, and your work does not go unrecognized and unappreciated. Thank you so much. I was sitting here and I realized that as the mayor, I've either appointed or reappointed everybody up there, I think. And that's very unusual for a 2-year term. I mean, normally because it's spread out, and I think we have to go way back to the original of the city to figure that out. So I think I've left a great legacy. I think all of you do an awesome job, and Newcastle's in good hands. So I want to wish you all Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Thank you for your efforts and your future efforts. I just make one comment. I know tonight you're going to be talking about, I believe, the zoning issue for some of our residents about the setbacks. So I just would encourage you to please, 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 grandfather in the existing residents, right? Don't penalize them for, living there for 20 or 30 years and all of a sudden they can't use their property. That's all I would say about that. But mainly, I just want to thank you, and my son and I are happy to be here. And if he could see anymore, he's 18, but he loves Uncle Len, but he can't see it. Sorry, Len. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, Rob. Would anyone else like to speak?
Sorry, can you turn the mic on just so it gets captured? Thank
There
you.
we are. Yeah. So,
I thought this time I would read something from the Attorney General, Bob Ferguson, that he wrote last October. He was talking about takings and substantive due process. I understand that the rules from ecology say that as long as you have some value left, we didn't take it. I also understand that if you take 60% of my land and 30 to 40% of my value of $1 million piece of property, it's $300,000, $400,000. Believe me, you took something. That is apparently what substantive due process is about. According to Bob Ferguson, courts have acknowledged that regulations are a necessary part of an ordered society, and they may limit the use of property impacting its value. However, if a regulation or regulatory action is likely to result in a substantial reduction in property value, the agency should consider the possibility that a taking or a violation of substantive due process may occur. Because government actions are often characterized in terms of overall fairness, a taking or violation of substantive due process is more likely to be found when it appears that a single property owner is being forced to bear the burden of addressing some societal concern, when in all fairness, the cost ought to be shared across society. When there is less than a complete deprivation of all value, a court will evaluate whether a taking has occurred by considering the economic impact in relation to at least two factors: the extent to which the government's action impacts legitimate and long-standing expectations about the use of that property, and the character of the government's action, whether it amounts to physical invasion or just merely affects their property interests. Factors to consider: ensure that the actions are reasonably designed to advance a legitimate state interest. I believe that setbacks actually, to some extent, do. I'm not sure that they do for my property. To determine whether government is reasonable, a court will consider the relation between the government's purpose and the burden on that landowner. To what extent does the landowner's land contribute to the problem the government is trying to solve? How far will that proposed regulation or action go towards actually solving that problem? A court will want to know if there's a better solution. The people of Washington are best served when governments aspire to adopt the fairest possible approaches. Often a key question is the amount by which the value of the owner's property is decreased by the government's action. In evaluating this loss in property value, a court will look at the absolute decrease of value and the percentage that this compromises of the total value of the property for accomplishing the important public policy. Conclusion: ultimately, the people of Washington state are best served when state and local governments aspire to adopt the fairest possible approaches for accomplishing important public purposes. We therefore encourage government decision makers to seek effective regulatory approaches that fairly consider both the public interests and the interests of private property owners, while using these guidelines to avoid unconstitutional takings. I understand that I'm one person. I do understand that there are maybe 2 other houses on Lake Bourne, which, regardless of how you put it on your paper, is a lake. You fish, you swim, you put boats on it, it's a lake. Actually, based on legal definitions of lakes, it kind of qualifies. It has a defined shoreline, which a wetland doesn't, et cetera, et cetera. There may, in fact, be 2 other pieces of property. I think there's just one. Everybody else is built where they're built, and they will stay there forever. If we build mine back 25, 50 feet closer than what the setback says, I just can't imagine that the quality of Lake Bourne will be compromised. And if you add it to the other 2, I still don't think it will, when we have so many houses built at 40 feet. Anyways, you've listened to me rant enough. And you've listened to Bob Ferguson. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Strange. As is customary in public comment periods, we don't respond to individual commenters at the time they comment, but we will come back to this in a little bit to say a little bit more about what we've done since the last time you commented. That concludes the public comment period, and it brings us to the commissioner comment. And tonight I would like to lead off with the commissioner comments. First, I'd like to say thank you to Rob Clark. Your words for us were very kind, but I believe that we could reflect them back to you. I think your service during the last 2 years has been one of courage and one where you have striven to be just and fair, and it doesn't always appear that way to everybody who votes in the city, but I appreciate your efforts and I appreciate what you've done as mayor of the city, so thank you for that. The comments for Ms. Drang, Director Fitzgibbons is going to talk a little bit more about that when she gives her report. But I will say that we on the commission, for what it's worth, sympathize with your plight. We have, the vice chair and I have talked with Director Fitzgibbons to explore ways that we could within the law find some way to accommodate your situation, because I share your opinion that there's not going to be any change to Lake Bourne if you were to build just like your neighbors built. We were unable to find a legal way to do that, or a way that didn't have impacts beyond not just you and the 2 other lots on the lake, but further beyond. So I wish that we could do more.
You can't define Lake Bourne as being something other than the other wetlands?
No, I don't believe we can, but Director Fitzgibbons will address this when she gives the director's report. So. And then the last thing I'd like to do is to introduce our newest member of the commission, Chris Beeson. Commissioner Beeson has extensive experience in the construction industry, doing everything from being a project manager to the CEO of a construction firm. Her experience, I think, is going to be really valuable to us as we ponder issues such as the downtown design standards, the non-conforming structures law, particularly as they apply to commercial buildings, and the barriers to affordable housing, because I think that's likely going to come back. Affordable housing will come back before us this year. I think it's going to be really important and really helpful to have somebody with that construction background. Chris lives in China Creek. Turns out she's a neighbor of Commissioner Cack. She also serves on the board of the Big Brothers Big Sisters of Puget Sound, and I'm really excited to have her join us. So welcome, Chris.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to working with all of you.
And we will move on to other commissioners. If you'd like to say anything else now, you might as well continue. Otherwise, we'll go to another commission.
Nope, I'm good. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, let's just move from left to right. Vice Chair Troutman, would you like to comment?
As always, it's good to be back with you guys. I'm a pretty lucky guy to be able to have such esteemed colleagues and staff. I appreciate everything you do, and I hope you have a happy holiday. I like to always acknowledge the audience, and we've got special guests in the audience tonight. And I echo what the Chair Gadzik said about Mayor Clark's meritorious service to the city. And I'd like to also add in, behind every great man, there's generally a great woman. And Madam First Lady has been through every battle, right side to side with Rob. And it hasn't been easy, and I really, I admire that very much. And I like my little buddy. I'm glad to see him today. That'll do it. Thank you.
I would like to also thank Mayor Clark for his service. What an exceptional tenure. It was a privilege to be nominated for this position by you. I would also like to give a warm welcome to my neighbor and also our newest planning commissioner member. And then I've been seeing the lights around, so a big shout out to all the residents of Newcastle for the lights of Newcastle. It's been gorgeous. I mean, people have really outdone themselves this year. So I'm just waiting to see who's going to be the winner. So a wonderful, great job, the city. Thanks.
Yeah, first, I also want to welcome the new commissioner, Chris. I'm glad that we have 7 commissioners on board right now. And I look forward to working with you. I will say we have a great team under the leadership of our chair, Gaddick. And I also want to thank Mayor as he mentioned. I am actually reappointed by Mayor Clark to, this is my 2nd term. I was appointed by former Mayor Nguyen, and so I look forward to continue working and contributing on this planning commission. And I just want to touch a little bit in terms of our residents' concerns, specifically on the critical area ordinance. I think we do hear a lot of comments. Actually, when I was doing campaign the past November, and I think this is going to be a very hot topic among our residents. And I do think we have a goal, objective to consider find a balanced approach to meet the compliance requirements and also our residents' needs.
Welcome, Chris. It's nice. It is nice to have 7 people up here. And thank you for the kind words, Mayor Clark. That's very nice of you to come down and say that.
I'd just say welcome to the new commissioner. And I would like to say that I think I was appointed by Mayor Clark twice. First to the position initially and then reappointed lately. But more than that, I'd like to thank you, Rob, for your service in the Navy. Without that, we don't have freedom. So thank you for that. And thank you also for your dedication to having recognized veterans as diligently as you did. And while I say that, then I want to say that, Kelly, you are a superstar. You truly, truly have dedicated so much to this community and, of course, to Rob. So thanks go to both of you.
Okay, we will move to reports. The chair does not have a report, so we'll go directly to the director when she is ready.
Thank you, Chair Gadzik. Good evening, everyone. I was specifically asked to talk to the situation on Lake Bourne and other properties in the city. Ms. Drain's property, and staff did reach out to wetland scientists as well as the city attorney, and nothing was found in terms of reclassifying a lake. A lake is such classified because of its size and its navigability. If a lake is so we have a 16-acre depressional wetland is what Lake Bourne technically is. It's a pond and it's regulated as a wetland because of that. Also, it is not considered a shoreline of the state, and under a shoreline of state, it would be subject to a shoreline master plan. But because it's not, it's subject to the critical areas requirements. People may ask, well, why can you have boats and houses closer to the water? on, like, say, like Washington or like Sammamish, and one of the reasons is that those are subject to shoreline master plans, and they also, shoreline master program. We have our wetland biologist here tonight. I'm put it shoreline master plan or program? Program, I'm sorry, I'm saying that wrong. So shoreline master programs, that law was actually created before critical areas laws were created, so it just has a different set of requirements. And if you have questions about that, I'm sure we could ask Mr. Yormak to help us out. But in the meanwhile, we consulted with wetland biologists and the city's attorney, and so far as we could tell, there's no reclassifying of a water body by a city. In addition, the 110-foot buffer that is on Lake Warren is, for the wetland, has been there since the last critical areas update, and we're not proposing that to change. The only thing that staff are proposing is a 10-foot building setback buffer, like you would have a building setback from your own property line. And that's in order to make sure that property owners can maintain their structures, their buildings, their homes, without encroaching into that buffer. A lot of times these buffers require special plantings, or the buffers are there because, let's say, for a hazardous, like a geotechnical hazard, we don't want people pushing up against, a hillside in order to maintain their homes. So it's really in order to keep just a safe distance away from those buffers in order to maintain the home and not encroach into the buffer. Let's see here. Other properties on Lake Warren and elsewhere develop in the city, Planner Coyle is working on what's called a reasonable use exceptions right now. He just had a hearing on Friday, and for property owners that are completely encumbered by critical areas, they have to go through an additional entitlement process that takes a long time and a lot of negotiation, because what they're trying to do is make sure that they're encroaching into the critical area as little as possible. Things such as the footprint of the building and how large the building is, normally it's a home, single-family home, come into play here. And so they don't have as much sort of freedom over what they can do on their property. But again, it's because these regulations were created over time, and they do encumber these properties that were created sight unseen. Or just under a different era. Critical areas regulations have been around since the 90s. Before then, it was environmentally sensitive areas. And for those properties around the lake, I mean, some of those homes those were old cabins from the 1940s. Over time, if they tear down their buildings or even do enough renovation to trigger certain nonconformance standards, they're going to have to develop outside of those buffers as much as possible. Even the reasonable use exceptions that are happening now, again, they're happening as far away from the critical areas and their buffers. And something that Mr. Yormak will talk about tonight is how it's been found that it's really important to maintain a distance from these habitats in order for the entire ecological cycle to have a chance to thrive. I will leave it at that. I've been through a lot of discussions on similar topics lately, so I don't want to blather on for too long, but if you have questions, it's up to Chair Gatzik if he would allow them.
Well, would you address a little bit the problem with making an exception for one property owner and not making that exception for not just the two on the lake, but other people who are affected by a similar critical areas ordinance?
Sure. I mean, technically we can't. The city cannot make a special, what would be called a special privilege. right? We can't allow one person to do one thing and then not allow everybody else to do it. Our codes apply to everybody across the board, and it's only under certain circumstances where you don't find there's a special privilege, where you find that there is some sort of very specific situation that doesn't allow a property to get used the same way that everybody else can use their property. So, for example, these reasonable use exceptions where they're completely covered, where the properties are completely covered by critical areas, they can't actually use their property for anything other than a viewing area or trails, right, outright by code. It's very similar to like a variance process. A variance, typically we don't permit variances to our code unless there's a very specific situation. The staff, it's just, again, it's codes apply across the board, and we can't. Because there are other situations where if we started allowing certain, we can't be arbitrary, we can't be capricious, and we can't pick and choose, because that creates a whole bunch of other issues, as you can imagine.
Director Fitzgibbons, if I understand things correctly, we have exhausted all of the potential avenues to assist Ms. Strange in her desires to use her property. Is that a fairly accurate statement, or do we have any other options available to us at this stage of the game?
At this point, we have no other outlets. If, often the burden of proof is upon the property owner or the applicant. So it's not that the city wouldn't listen if a conversation was started to show that, for example, we're wrong about the classification of Lake Bourne as a lake. But I'm sorry, but I can't answer questions from the public during these reports.
Well, let me follow up on that a little bit, Director, because just a minute ago you said that we should take into account very specific situations. And Ms. Strange is the last property owner, save maybe one on the lake, that, that would make her very, very specific. And I'm not trying to cause any trouble, I'm just trying to understand if there's anything that we can do at this stage, because otherwise the city is likely to end up in court, and that's no fun for anybody. So
Right.
I'm just grasping at straws here. Is there any,
There's not. This would be, that would constitute a special privilege for a property that can otherwise be fully developed outside of its critical area. Yeah, and beyond that, I cannot give legal advice, and I cannot speak about legal proceedings during this meeting.
Do any other commissioners have any questions on this particular item for the director?
Just for my clarification, I know in the past when we had these discussions, we had talked about how we could grandfather in some of the properties. So am I to understand that that's off the table then? We can't really accommodate these properties anymore then?
Actually, that's going to be part of the streams discussion tonight, is the nonconformance code. But again, our wetland buffers aren't changing from what they currently are. It's the stream buffers that I think we're going to need to have a bigger conversation on tonight.
Our conversation tonight is about the change that we're making to the existing. The problem that Ms. Strange has is with the existing, not with the proposed. So. Any other questions on this particular item? And do you have other things you'd like to report on before we move on to the agenda?
No, thank
No?
you.
Okay. Any other questions for Director Fitzgibbons, period, then? Okay, we will then move to,
Chair Gatzek?
oh, I'm sorry, yes, Commissioner
I
Lowe.
just have a very quick follow-up question on that buffer. Is it, I think I might heard it wrong. Is it 110 plus 10 or it's 100 plus 10 setback?
Yeah, so the existing's 110, and that's the proposed, but then it would be a 10-foot setback for that maintenance area. For buildings, it can still be, we can talk about this during that item.
Okay, moving on. There are no public hearings tonight, so we'll begin with.
I'm sorry, there is a public hearing tonight, sir.
Pardon me?
Public hearing on the 2025 housekeeping ordinance?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't. I overlooked that. Okay. So, let me see if I can find my cheat sheet here about script for conducting a public hearing. Just gonna do it properly. Pull out my impressive stack of papers here. Well, we're just going to have to wing it. Okay, we are holding a public hearing on the housekeeping ordinance. So approaching this with from a non-technical point of view, this is the opportunity for the public to comment on changes that we will be recommending or voting on a recommendation to City Council at the close of the public hearing. With that, I will open the public hearing. It is now 6:33. Is there anybody who would like to address this topic? Pardon? The staff presentation is first. Pardon. All right. That's what
Last meeting of the year.
That's what cheater notes are meant to help you avoid. Okay, we will not open the public hearing at this moment. We will begin with the staff presentation, and then we will open the public hearing. So, Associate Planner Coyle, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Given that the commission has been through all of these point by point already, the presentation was largely geared towards the general. Oh, okay. The presentation was generally geared towards the public. So given the light attendance that we have for this riveting event, I will move quickly. And I did print off the code change tracker, and I'm sorry that it's coming this late, but the printer was acting up a bit beforehand. Okay, so what is housekeeping? Minor updates to city code, fixing logical inconsistencies, removing outdated terms, maintaining. I think.
For anybody watching us online, we are trying to get the presentation on the right screen so you are able to see it. And so the commissioners are able to see it, so we can't see it either.
I think we may, I don't know if anyone saw that just now, but I think this computer may reboot itself in the next minute. So that's good. Why is this? Oh, there we are. Okay, so what is housekeeping? That's quite the menu of options there. Minor updates to city code, fixing logical inconsistencies. Keeps code logical and removes bloat, does not substantially change any city policy. We do this annually. This year, we have four general categories of changes. We've got Department of Commerce comments that came from the comp plan originally. We have clear and objective design standards, a new state law. We have general code cleanup, and then illegal code, which is responsive to another state law. So for the Department of Commerce comments, they had some concerns that there were some state comments that were not reflected in city code. Some of those included that we didn't explicitly, our code did not explicitly protect early learning facilities from paying extra impact fees versus other uses, but it was silent on the matter, and so they were already charged the same as other projects, and so updating the code for that was not a substantial change, for example. So they also wanted us to include a code process for checking against regulatory takings, make sure that, and make it explicit that a failing septic system that pollutes waters in the state is in fact against our code. It could have been very easily construed to be against our code before, but now it is explicit, or would be explicit were this to pass. Clear and objective design standards. So this is a new state or newish state law, 36.70A.630. Some of the city's design guidelines were unenforceable as written due to just being subjective. And so what's proposed here is changes of the wording within our design guidelines designed to retain the intent of the code while becoming enforceable again. There may be a larger conversation about those design guidelines and how they, how the spirit of them aligns with this rule, but that's well beyond what housekeeping is capable of addressing. We have general code cleanup. One of those would be to make available space to build in a planned unit development net of critical areas rather than gross. This restores the intent of the code which was accidentally affected when another rule was changed. We have updating references to obsolete building and fire codes, removing non sequitur native vegetation reference from our tree retention code, and removing urban design fidgeting from sub-areas that have been successfully redeveloped, namely the commons and aegis, and updating definitions, clarifying interpretations, etc. And then lastly, we have illegal code, which is a new state law that restricts cities specifically from regulating particular building cladding materials. We have several codes within our design guidelines that do call out specific building materials, and so we'll need to remove those to comply. And so that is everything. So, yeah, that is it.
Were you proposing that we go over the line items?
So, actually, I'd like to ask you if you thought that would be a good use of time, because we have talked about some of these already, and given the given the lack of people from the public here right now, I wasn't sure if you thought that would be productive. So I would like to ask if you wanted to do that.
Commissioners, what do you think? Do you want to go through each of the, or at least scan them and, I know we've gone through these before, so if you are comfortable with what we've done in the past, we could skip that step, but if there's any that upon your most recent review you have a question about, we can do that, or we could go through all of them if you want. Commissioner Blocker.
Tyler, the red lines are the actual changes in what we have in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
And they're basically what we already discussed.
Yes.
And you took away and crafted per our, thank you.
Yeah, that's right.
For what it's worth, I went through these things line by line by line. I'm kind of funny that way. And I didn't see anything that was a red flag or anything. I mean, we've discussed most of this before, so I would be inclined to just assume that we know what we're talking about here.
Commissioner Blocker.
Is a motion appropriate?
Yes, but before we get to the point, I did want to ask about, I just want to make sure I'm understanding one part of the red line. I think it was the part that applied to Aegis. I remember it was page 14. I was trying to find it on my laptop, but could you
Sure. We had,
find
I
that?
think it was about the Peterson, the reference to the Peterson property. This is on the third page. This would be NMC 18.22.030.B.4. Remove point 4, concentrate multifamily residential development on the Peterson property to maximize open space and preserve sensitive areas.
Okay, no, that's actually not the one that I was thinking of. And I did find it. It is 18.22.040 Coal Creek Sector Area Specific Guidelines.
Yes, so those were essentially for the new, or not essentially, they were for the then brickyards. They were for the then brickyards, now the Newcastle Commons, and they laid out the visioning for building the Newcastle Commons. That has since been completed and actually largely follows the vision, but now it's essentially become an historical document, so it should be time to sunset.
Okay, good. I just wanted to confirm that that's what, okay.
Yeah.
All right, it sounds like we can skip going through the red line, and we can entertain a motion.
I move that the commission adopts the changes as proposed in red.
We have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Or actually, is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, 7-0 passes. Brings us to the critical,
Chair Getzik and Director Fitzgibbons.
oh, no, we have,
is
I'm sorry,
going
we
to-
missed the public hearing. There's nobody here for the public hearing, but you think we're okay? All right, so for the record, I will state that this was the chair's error and for misreading the agenda, that we did this in the improper order, and that there is nobody in the audience here to participate in a public hearing, so if we were to reopen it, it would be pointless, so we will not reopen it. Okay, now we move to item 9.1 of general business, which is the critical areas code. And to establish.
Unfortunately, we're 5 seconds from the computer forcing itself to restart.
Okay. We'll We will wait for the computer to restart, and then we will move with the presentation for the critical areas code.
While we're waiting for that to start, okay, should I introduce Mr. Yormak? Okay. So as you all know, our streams, we started this critical areas update, oh my goodness, last May, I want to say. In July, we submitted it to the state and we got comments back from Department of Fish and Wildlife. And we found that they have new guidance, and we specifically needed help working through the new guidance for the streams. And so Mr. Doug Yormak, am I saying that correctly? Okay, he is from Facet consulting firm. They're local, and he's been working on our critical areas guidance. He's an environmental planner, and he's been working with multiple other jurisdictions and has just a wealth of knowledge. So just glad to have him here. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Good evening. And I'm here to present the Fish and Wildlife Habitat Conservation Area Best Available Science Addendum.
Yeah.
I'll just let you know. I'll let you know that.
Get that? Perfect.
So the document that you have that we provided is the Best Available Science Addendum. Back in 2014, we had company Facet, then it was the Watershed Company, had done the Best Available Science for your last Critical Areas Ordinance update. I think I see that. No, all right. So Best Available Science is a state law Growth Management Act requirement that jurisdictions have to update their critical area ordinance every 10 years. As I said last time, I believe it was 2015. The report that we had provided originally was from 2014. Since the last update, there has been update to Best Available Science, including recommendations from Fish and Wildlife on riparian management and priority habitats and species. So Growth Management Act states that critical area protections and standards should rely on best available science, and this addendum just builds upon that science that we had provided back in 2014 to include the additional science that has come out regarding riparian areas and priority habitats and species. Oh, that font is not right. Oh, okay. One of the provisions is, principles in state law is called no net loss. This means that as we plan and regulate development, we must make sure we don't reduce the ecological benefits of the critical areas and what they provide. Critical areas aren't just pieces of land, they perform essential functions that keep our environment healthy. For example, they store carbon, help manage stormwater by reducing peak flows, keep groundwater levels stable, and filter pollutants from water and provide cool water for habitat and fish. These functions translate to values. These are the benefits that we all experience: clean water, flood protection, healthy fish populations, and even cultural and recreational opportunities are all parts of these values. Under state law, cities and counties must protect these functions and values when designated critical areas and for writing the development standards and regulations. Best available science is a key requirement in Washington state law. When we designate critical areas and development regulations to protect them, we must use best available science. That means that our decision should be based on current, credible scientific information, not outdated data or assumptions. The law also calls out special considerations for Andromenous fish. These fish species, like salmon, migrate between freshwater and saltwater, and protecting these species is critical for both the ecological health and cultural value of the region. Finally, we encourage to protect both surface water and groundwater resources. This ensures that our approach looks at the whole system and not just one piece of it. There is a mechanism in the state law to deviate from best available science to include legal, social, cultural, economic, and political information that departs from best available science. And what that would entail is, essentially building a record for why you are deviating from it, identify information and record that supports the decision, explain the rationale for departing from best available science, identify any potential risks to critical area function and values, and then explain why this departure from best available science is necessary and how those critical area values and functions will be maintained to ensure that no net loss occurs. So this month provided Aaron with the draft best available science addendum for fish and wildlife habitat conservation areas. This addendum just adds to the science that was in the 2014 report by just incorporating new science in regards to fish and wildlife habitat, which also includes streams. A full reference to all of the peer-reviewed literature and documents used are included in the reference section 4. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the fish and wildlife habitat conservation areas. These areas support species and habitats critical to our ecosystem. First, we identify and classify these areas based on state guidelines. That includes places with endangered, threatened, or sensitive species, habitats of local importance, and water bodies like lakes, ponds, streams, and rivers. These areas provide important functions and values, such as maintaining healthy biological, chemical, and physical habitat conditions. To manage them, we follow or develop standards that include designating these habitat areas and providing buffers from adjacent land uses. We also require habitat assessments when needed to make sure the impacts are avoided, minimized, or mitigated. This is one of the big changes from the last update. Back in 2020, WDFW had published their guidance on riparian ecosystems. Volume 1 is the best available science literature review that kind of summarizes all of the key functions and values for riparian areas. And then the follow-up companion document, Volume 2, are the management recommendations. So they identified removing pollutants for water quality, supporting aquatic and terrestrial habitats, and recruiting large woody debris that creates habitat complexity and regulates stream temperature. Those are the areas that they identified that are key for streams. And then for this regulatory portion of it in Volume 2, this is where they go into more detail on the management recommendations, which Maybe you have heard the term site potential tree height. This is where you will find that that's their management recommendation. Let's get into the minimum size for that riparian area should be 100 feet for all streams for water quality effectiveness, and then wider buffers would create even greater benefit, but 100 feet is the minimum standard. And then for this is where we're gonna get into a little bit of the site potential tree height. So this is their recommendation for how to determine what a stream buffer should be. And actually, they don't even call it a buffer. It's a riparian management zone. In itself, they're trying to have considered a critical area. The WAC specifies that streams are critical areas, not the areas adjacent to the stream. But their recommendation is to consider the whole riparian area, including the buffer, as the critical area. And their idea is that the buffer should be wide enough to allow the tallest tree that can grow naturally on that site to reach its full height. It uses a combination approach of soil type, climate, and ecological region to estimate that potential. And on the right-hand side, which it does not show up well on here, they did create a mapper tool that can show what the site potential tree height is for a given area. This, I selected a parcel that is along Bourne Creek. And here, they state that the site potential tree height at this location is 196 feet. So also getting a little bit into site potential tree height is, and we'll get into this on later slides, is that it's not a fixed buffer for that stretch of stream or that entire stream. It can change drastically from property to property, to where you can have on this site, it's 196 feet, but if you go a little further upstream near Lake Bourne Park, the site potential tree height there is 100 feet. And it's just determined by the type of tree. In this location, the dominant tree species would be Douglas fir. That can grow up to 196 feet in 200 years, whereas in the park just south of Lake Bourne, it's 100 feet because the dominant tree species there is red alder. So then we take that best available science and we use that to perform a gap analysis. The gap analysis is still in draft form right now and will be provided to the city shortly. But we still know certain things within the code that have gaps from the best available science. Mainly, we were looking at the stream buffer standards. So buffer width, the vegetation standards, and any sort of buffer flexibility standards, such as buffer averaging. In that gap analysis, we'll be providing a GIS analysis that looks at current buffer sizes. We'll have various options, and then also the site potential tree height. So I have here where the predictive model, which is what you currently use, which is the Department of Natural Resources, water typing, what their buffers are, and then the impacts to the number of properties that are impacted by the current standards. Using the site potential tree height model, we also show what the impacts would be. And for some reason, this is flipped, but number 5, I'll try and talk really loud. So number 5 here are the number of what we would call completely encumbered parcels, which under your current buffers, there's 37 parcels that are nearly 100% encumbered. With the site potential tree height model, where the buffer ranges from 100 to, I believe, 211 feet, an average of around 196 feet for all of the streams in Newcastle, the number of fully encumbered parcels jumps up to over 1,000. Most of the streams that we have mapped do contain fish. And most of the streams here largely fall into that 196, 200 feet riparian buffer zone. So there's a huge jump using the WDFW's latest guidance. So this is slide with stream buffer implications. So predictive model on the left, which is using the water type system that you've been using since you've had a critical area ordinance. And then the site potential tree height. So this slide kind of compares the two approaches. The predictive model uses fixed buffer sizes and based on stream type, so whether or not that stream contains fish, if it's a shoreline of the state, or if it's doesn't have any fish habitat and it's perennial stream type NP, or it's a seasonal stream type NS. Well, the site potential tree height tool sets buffers according to that site's tree height, focusing on ecological function. Under the site potential tree height approach, buffers vary and can be quite large when compared to the predictive model. Some pros and cons to the WDFW's guidance. So this approach fully aligns with best available science and provides site-specific flexibility, but it's new, it's not readily understood, and may require an additional review process and adjustments for existing developments. Probably bring more third-party consultants would have to evaluate what that site potential tree height is. Going back to what I was saying before with the slide, that WDFW's tool, that's not 100% accurate either. They're using that information. A lot of it is Department of Agriculture, soil polygons that were done back in the 60s and 70s, may not be accurate. So having a site-specific analysis is key in determining what that site potential tree height would be. Under the predictive model, the classification approach provides clear criteria for determining the presence of fish habitat, uses fixed buffer widths, and it's predictable and easier for homeowners and for administrators. However, these fixed buffer widths may not fully support riparian functions and are not fully aligned with WDFW guidance. The current buffer widths need review, and some increases should be considered with a minimum 100 feet recommended for water quality function. So for determining the appropriate stream buffer, or the size of the stream buffer, what we tend to do is a combination approach of taking the science that's within WDFW's guidance and applying it to kind of the more predictive model of using the water type system. The chart on the left represents a FEMAT curve. So this comes from volume 1 of WDFW's guidance, and it represents the 4 key riparian ecological functions: root strength, litter fall, shading, and then coarse wood debris within the channel. As you can see, there's a point of diminishing return as you increase distance from the stream channel. And we use the asymptote of that curve to kind of determine where riparian functions are mostly approaching 100%, where adding any more, you don't get a whole lot of benefit for. So we usually use roughly 75% of what the site potential tree height is. Using this percentage and applying the determined site potential tree height, we get a buffer size usually around 150 feet. And with our discussions with Fish and Wildlife, 150 feet is fine for applying that to streams that contain fish habitat. So using kind of this combination approach provides similar ecological functions and protections using the water type system versus going for the site potential tree height. And then for smaller perennial seasonal streams, a 100-foot buffer is recommended for water quality function. In that volume 1 document from WDFW, they show how 100 foot for water quality eliminates almost 95% of pollutants before it enters the stream channel. So some stream regulations. So these are not necessarily the buffer standards, but maybe think about them as kind of, you know, the requirements for the buffers themselves. So we've included native vegetation standards, so having minimum standards for the buffer condition itself, and if that buffer isn't meeting those, then a planting plan should be provided in order to plant that stream buffer to meet that minimum vegetation standard. Then there's also buffer modification options. Buffer averaging can be retained, but the maximum reduction at any point along the stream buffer is 25% of that assigned buffer, and then a straight 25% buffer reduction is not supported by best available science. Another item to consider are interrupted buffer standards. So this is where you have a road or a development that is in between, say, somebody who wants to develop. You can have standards in place that effectively end the buffer, say, at the right-of-way edge, so it does not extend onto the property across the street.
Doug, would it make sense before we move on to let anybody ask questions about that
Absolutely.
portion? Does anybody have clarifying questions or just questions about what's already been presented?
Hi, Doug. Thanks for going through this. You mentioned a term called buffer flexibility standards, and I wondered if you could give an example of what those are and how they'd be applied in what circumstances.
Yes, so one option would be for buffer averaging, and that is removing a portion of a buffer on site and then adding it to a different portion on site. So effectively, you're reducing the buffer in one area while increasing it in another to accommodate developments on the site. I could follow up with a slide. I think I've got one that I could send to demonstrate what that looks like with a subdivision, since that's what it was used for. But that's essentially what it is. It's just reducing in one area, adding to another to accommodate a development.
Commissioner Lowe?
Yes, Doug, I have a question. I think what we're talking about buffer here, one is stream buffer, another is wetland buffer. Are we saying we are using different best available signs? So for stream buffer, we're using the riparian, and for the wetland, we're using the type of water. And that's the one, no change?
For wetlands, you're there are two different state agencies who publish the best available science. Ecology provides the wetland best available science and guidance, and then WDFW provides the stream guidance, or they did for this round of CAO updates. They are different. The wetland guidance comes from Ecology, and they have been at this a lot longer than WDFW has been, so their guidance is, I would say, a little bit more thorough and provides, it provides better guidance for implementing the buffers that are recommended into the CAO. WDFW for the riparian areas did not do that. I don't want to put words into a state agency's mouth, but they want just to use the site potential tree height. So it doesn't come with a variety of options and numeric values for what that buffer size should be. It's site potential tree height. So we're trying to, in a way, blend what, applicants, homeowners, developers have grown accustomed to with this predictive model for stream buffers, and kind of blend their science in with what is already being used on the ground and has been used on the ground for decades.
So the predictive model is kind of hybrid version, or it's still more similar to the wetland?
Wetlands and streams are, the buffers and the science behind them are different. And the guidance documents and the best available science is different and comes from different state agencies.
I'm just wondering if there is a way kind of going with a more, I guess, a less restrictive approach or best available science.
And that's the approach for streams that we're trying to balance. Going the site potential tree height route, the buffers are large and it doesn't take into consideration the stream size. All streams are treated equally, and you apply, whatever the site potential tree height is for a small seasonal stream, and then it's also the same on a large fish-bearing stream. So there's no differentiation between the two. They're all treated equally. And with this approach, smaller streams will have, a less restrictive buffer, and, fish-bearing streams could have a slightly larger buffer than the smaller streams. And then for streams that are type S, those are shorelines of the state, those buffer sizes aren't changing at all. That's a separate law that's managed under the Shoreline Management Act and the Shoreline Master Program that requires a locally initiated amendment through Ecology. So those aren't being touched at all. Those would remain the same.
Doug, your presentation that you were about to go about with non-conforming structures, is there more beyond that section? What else are you going to cover tonight?
Non-conforming is it.
Is it? Okay. Before we go to non-conforming then, I'd like to stay with the stream buffers. Our struggle is that the state's guidance, the way they'd like to have it, is going to create problems for homeowners. I think I'm speaking for the commission when I say that we want to find a way for there to be the least impact on our homeowners and still comply and still provide enhanced environmental protection. I haven't heard how to do that from your presentation. I don't know if that was part of your intent to give that, but I was hoping that your firm's experience working with other cities and how they've approached this and how they've made proposals to the state for ways that address the same concern.
Yeah.
Whether there's something we could learn from them that we could apply here.
Yeah, I can, my experience with updating CAOs over this past year, most, I would say, are going staying with all are staying with the water type, so type F, type N, the type F and type N streams. Keeping that, their buffers, most, I would say, are going the 150-foot route for type F streams, and then just meeting the minimum water quality function standards for the smaller streams, the type NPs and the type NSs. That's where most are going. And then, not to jump ahead to my next slide, what they're doing to kind of allow some flexibility with those existing developments that are already there are going through their non-conforming section and kind of allowing a little bit more flexibility for those existing homes or existing developments that are impacted by the buffer increases.
Okay, well, good. Let's go to your non-conforming section then. I think that's what I was hoping to
Yeah,
hear. Okay.
but the majority of the CAOs that I've worked on, 150 foot for the type F and then 100 feet for the type N streams. So non-conforming section allows for some limited flexibility within existing developments that don't meet the critical area buffers. The CAO recognizes legally established structures in critical areas or their buffers as non-conforming, but provide for clear allowances for maintenance and expansion under specific conditions. So this would apply to all structures built before the adoption of this critical area ordinance. Those would be considered non-conforming. They can remain in place and be maintained. Where you can allow some flexibility is, allowing certain expansions to occur. One that can always happen is, if you have the opportunity to build outside of the buffer, that's always going to be allowed. Another thing that you could allow is, vertical expansion above, to add upper stories, even if that's within the buffer. Another is, horizontal expansion. So in addition to the home that within an already disturbed area, so this would be, patio, lawn, garden, is allowed as long as it doesn't encroach any closer to that critical area than the primary structure. Reconstruction after disaster would, allowing that to occur, replacement in kind, but it's just any new construction would have to comply with the CAO standards unless there's certain exceptions. So, if beefing this section up, the aim is to balance property rights with environmental protection, allows for reasonable improvements on the land while also protecting and safeguarding those critical areas. And then I have a slide here which kind of just shows where those expansions can occur. So here I have a property along a stream. Stream has a 100-foot buffer. So this home is partially within the buffer. Obviously, one is outside of the buffer here. That would be allowed. Two, anywhere over that existing home to expand vertically at upper stories. And then three, I have a patio there expansion would be allowed there. Because the home itself is 70 feet from the edge of the stream, and where this patio isn't encroaching any closer than the 70-foot that the home currently sits at. So you would have an expansion in that area as well. And then any questions on the non-conforming and what would be allowed or not?
So you found through your firm's experience with other cities that ordinances that conform to this non-conforming, these principles that we're looking at are acceptable to the state and are in compliance with the state. And Aaron, the ones we've already talked about, then are these very same principles, are they not?
Yeah, you mean the locations we've already spoken about, or just in general the non-conforming?
Well, no, talking about allowing up to a 500-foot expansion into a previously disturbed area, for example.
Yeah, yes, so the code that was provided, the red lines that were provided tonight include these same principles.
And is it your opinion that these principles would give the flexibility needed by the people who've already come before us, telling us about their worries of the expansion in the buffers?
From what I recall from their situations, yes.
More questions for Commissioner Van Natta?
Got a couple. So the number 3 with the patio,
Yes.
what if that were just lawn?
Yeah. It would be considered a disturbed area. Lawn, garden. You just couldn't encroach closer to the stream than the closest portion of that current structure.
So that sort of bottom L shape, you could make the house rectangular,
Yes.
essentially?
Yep.
Interesting, okay. Okay. I guess one other question is, you talked about, ensuring no net loss. Couldn't we argue that with, I don't know what it is, 70-80% of Newcastle that's already built, that, our streams sort of are what they are, and that's the baseline? And if we maintain that, our current buffers, then we're maintaining that baseline, so no net loss of where we are today. Because I think what they're going with this is, maybe over the next 150 years, after all the homes get old and torn down and built and they get built back, they're trying to make the water quality like better than it is now. But I guess I would argue, I don't know if it's bad. Am I making sense here? Like, can't we just argue that what we have is where we start from? Because they're making, you know what I mean? They're making it more onerous to, and I don't think we're in a bad place, I don't think we have dying fish and a bunch of pollutants in our stream. Unless somebody has a study that proves me wrong. Has anybody ever come at it from that standpoint?
No. This is the first that I have heard of coming at it from this approach. I think what you say does make sense when you look at just the no net loss. Like you're operating, this is our baseline, we're not degrading it anymore. And think because we also have to look at best available science, and that's looking at, even though, yes, your baseline for the buffer sizes, we're going to maintain that's no net loss, there's still degradation of those critical areas, and that's what you're kind of creating standards for, to ensure that, not going to continue to degrade them. I don't know what the water quality is of your streams. Department of Ecology does have a whole database on, water quality, whether it's pollutants, water temperature. You know, I did not look at that for the streams in Newcastle, but I would imagine just like within most of Western Washington, there's probably something with the streams, whether it's temperature or, you know, low dissolved oxygen, and then pollutants from you know, runoff from the streets.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Troutman?
Thank you, Chair Gadzik. When we first started this adventure, we were looking for ways to have the least amount of impact on people. And we were told, well, we can do that if we get our own best available science. And as I see this, not only are we keeping the existing 2014 standards, but we've added additional ones on top of that. And I'm trying to square that with how that makes it any easier for folks to get around it. And I like what Commissioner Van Adder said, that, you know, we're doing fine the way we are. That's the approach that we're going to try to take. What we're looking for, Doug, is loopholes, to be honest with you. We're trying to find out any way that we can make things easier for our residents. And I mean, very extensive work that you've done here, but I don't see where it helps us any. Is that an accurate estimation of what's going on?
Yeah, with the best available science addendum, what we are looking for or not what we're looking for, what our intent is just to synthesize all of the science. Now, we have the science. What are some of the tools that we can use to allow that flexibility? We were talking about non-conforming development. So, you know, sites that are already existing within, you know, since we're talking about streams, or within stream buffers, what can they do to maintain their home? Not just like it just sits there and you can't touch it. Like you know, allow for some expansion in order to, you know, improve the quality of life of you being in that home. Another thing to look at are the interrupted buffer standards. Department of Ecology for wetlands has allowances for interrupted buffers. If there is a development or a road that's in between you and the wetlands, you know, the buffer can end where that development or road is. So incorporating that into your stream standards as well, so that not everywhere is getting, you know, the full buffer increases because of flexibility that's allowed.
So maybe this is something that the staff can weigh in on too, but so we're talking about these certain ways to work within these parameters, and who arbitrates that? Is it the city or is it the state? I mean, who's the final arbiter on what can and can't be done?
In terms of what's in the code?
In terms of what's being proposed and what's in the code, yes.
I mean, ultimately, it's a local decision. To your CAO update is, you know, so city council, there is an opportunity for state agencies to review and comment, and if they feel that it's, you know, what you're doing doesn't meet, you know, best available science, there's an opportunity to appeal that. But I wouldn't necessarily say that they're the final arbiter. But it's ultimately, it's a local decision to take the code, you know, in the direction that you want to, based on, you know, for critical areas, based on that best available science. And you know, you can add the flexibility that's, you know, needed to a degree. State agencies have generally been fine with those flexibilities, such as interrupted buffers. Ecology has included that in their guidance for years now.
So I guess another question that feeds into that is, I always have a problem distinguishing what are recommendations and what are requirements. And I'm not sure in this overall picture how much I can figure out the distinctions there.
Yeah, with the, you know, the requirements, I'm only going to speak for the streams right now. You know, the requirement is for you to look at your buffers and, you know, evaluate them based on what the new science, what the best available science says. You know, if you can, Aaron, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think your current type NS buffers are 25 feet. So those would be looked at by WDFW as being exceptionally small. They're looking at water quality functions, and 25 feet is not large enough to filter out pollutants from, you know, upland development. So the requirement would be to review your stream buffers and, where necessary, increase them in order to meet that best available science. But they don't provide a numeric value for what that should be. That is more of a local decision, and to a degree, utilizing what's in that science.
But there is no official provision for just saying, hey, what we've got is working, you know, the streams look kind of subjectively. It's been a while since I was at the School of Fisheries, but at any rate, just subjectively, everything looks fine as a baseline, the way status quo. And of course, that's the goal right now, is to keep things as close to status quo as possible. And so that's the reason I like to know what the difference between the requirements and recommendations are and how much you can push back. Presumably it'd have to mesh with whatever the newest best available science is.
Yeah, and there is a process to deviate from best available science when developing your buffer standards.
I'd like to hear about that.
Discussed that a little bit in an earlier slide. Get back to. So yeah, there is a process to use non-scientific information. I don't think I have. I just think I just mentioned it on this slide. Yeah. And the last bullet, it just says jurisdictions may depart from BAS. And when you go through the WAC for deviating from best available science, it says, and I'm going to read it here, it's like, when non-scientific information, including legal, social, cultural, economic, or political information that departs from best available science recommendations is used, identify information in the record that supports the decision to depart from BAS recommendations, explain rationale for departing from best available science, identify potential risks to critical areas, functions, and values, and then explain why this departure is necessary, and then how the critical area functions and values will be retained. So it's really documenting your approach, why it's necessary, and then what further actions will you take in order to protect those streams. So don't really have an example offhand, but, you know, say you want to keep that 25-foot buffer, having plans in place for, you know, enhancing certain functions and values of that stream or within the watershed by doing mitigation projects, for instance. Haven't really seen too many departures from best available science when it comes to stream buffers. But there would be work involved in order to demonstrate that.
And who reviews that, the state?
That would be bundled with, that would be bundled with your, CAO amendments and reviewed by various state agencies. So for streams, it would be Fish and Wildlife would look at that.
Thanks, Doug.
Yeah.
Did I hear you correctly that you haven't seen many examples of that in other cities yet?
No.
Have you seen any?
I know of one, City of Bellevue. They have stream buffers that are below 100 feet, and they will be documenting the rationale, reasoning, and their approach to protecting those streams further. That's work that they're going to have to do.
Is that work that your firm is assisting them with?
No.
No.
As of now, no. But they have the staff to do that.
Mhm. Commissioner Lowe?
Yes, I think I'm not very clear what will be depart from best available science. I think you mentioned that there's no specific number on the buffer,
Mhm.
but I think I also heard that you said minimum is 100 feet.
Yeah.
So if we keep what we have today, is that a departure?
That would be considered a departure from Fish and Wildlife's best available science.
Aaron, would it be fair to say that we really don't know what the impact would be if we move to these stream buffers, other than the few examples of people who have come forward and shared their concerns with us?
That's correct. Although FASA is working on a GIS model, he showed a snippet of that earlier. They're working on a dashboard. They did a similar one in Medina, where people will be able to look at it and see what the impact of the proposed different buffers would have on their property. So something maybe with the site potential tree height, what our code is today, and then maybe with the sort of in-between model where it's 100 feet and 150 feet for fish pairing. So other than that, I think that will be somewhat telling to see how many properties will be affected by these.
So let me kind of sketch a path forward and see if it makes sense to you. So you've written up some language that accommodates non-conforming structures and gives property owners, regardless of where they are and how far they are in relative to higher stream buffers, gives them some flexibility for expanding. And so if we were to move ahead, I'm assuming we would move ahead with the new predictive model stream buffers, which are higher than our existing stream buffers, and with the non-conforming structures language. And so we could move ahead with that. The city council could pass that. And then we could see what happens as property owners butt up against it when they realize what has happened, when they consult the map that is being prepared. And at that point, if the city wanted to, it could take a Bellevue approach and try to come up with the best available science to substantiate departures from the standard.
Yeah, I don't see why we couldn't do that. I don't know if, yeah, as long as it met yeah, I can't think of any reason why we couldn't do that. Can you?
No, so are you saying to just move forward with 150 foot for type F, type N's at 100, and just move that and then evaluate what happens and go with a code amendment in the future if there are issues.
Right, so it would be, you know, utilizing nonconformance codes and exceptions. And then, yeah, potentially in the future, if the city feels like it's an issue it needs to tackle, then we could go forward with additional studies and recommendations at that time. Yeah.
Commissioners, how does that sound to you? Commissioner Van Natten?
Couple of questions. The numbers you just threw out, the 150 feet and the 100 feet. I thought I heard earlier that there's a lower minimum required number?
100 feet is WDFW's recommendation for small, like the.
So does the 150 go to 100 and then the 100 stays at 100? I forget what the two streams were. So the 150 was for what type of stream?
Type F.
And type F, is there a minimum lower number of 100? Is that what I'm hearing?
So the type F is the fish-bearing stream?
Yep.
Right, and then the type N are non-fish-bearing stream
Okay,
types.
so the type, okay, but type F, what's the minimum required distance?
So that's where Doug was talking about using the 75% of the site potential tree height model, where we're saying, okay, across the city is looking like it's 196 feet, and there's kind of been this methodology to utilize that 75% marker of, okay, we're at 196 across the city is our site potential,
Yeah.
average site potential tree height.
So 75% gets to 150 feet. You're saying that's the minimum
For a fish-bearing
required
stream.
distance, yeah.
That's the methodology for getting there.
And then for the non-fish, it's 100?
And that's based on those studies that talk about the 95%, it's 95%
Okay,
filtration for
okay.
the, yeah.
And then will the GIS survey, will it have these streams classified as fish, non-fish bearing?
It will.
It will, okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Vice Chair Trotman?
Director Fitzgibbons, I'm wondering what our, our drop dead timeline on this is in order to, keep the state happy and do what what we need to do. What's the time frame?
State code requires it by December 31st. So we're going to be over, and the problem is with keeping this going out is that in March, we're applying for grants that require us to be through, yeah. So we're just, and not knowing how long these discussions will go at council too, we're kind of hitting up against our deadline here.
So the council would have to approve it by December 31st? That's not happening.
Right, exactly. It's not happening. We haven't had a hearing yet. So our aim is to get it hopefully approved by the second meeting in February, but that requires us to have a hearing next month.
Thank you.
Commissioner Blocker?
Who is doing the GIS mapping?
Our firm is.
Okay. And am I still correct in that all land measurements, so when we're talking about dimensions of buffer widths, all land measurements are still in level versus slope distance? So I don't know that a lot of people realize that if they're looking down the slope from their house to the stream, they go, oh, well, I'm 150 feet, but it's going to be way more when that gets leveled out and that GIS map gets printed. Seems like we're creating a huge difficulty for future replacement of homes. Seems like the legislature created huge problems for.
I'll work with Aaron. I mean, it could be even sooner than that. I'm not sure. I'll follow up with our GIS coordinator who's doing the mapping, and I can get a much better date tomorrow.
When we talk about calendar, let's kind of revisit the schedule about when if we were to have a workshop and how it coincides with the availability of the map and the public hearing and the council recommendation.
Okay.
Getting back to that question, that path forward where we adopt those standards now and wait to see what happens and let changes come if need arises, does that seem like a reasonable way to move forward and get our work done in order not to jeopardize our grant eligibility? Yeah, I see all heads nodding yes.
Okay,
Okay.
so we'll plan on a public hearing next month. Whether it's the final one, that's okay too.
Mhm.
We can always decide to have another one if we need to.
I think it kind of feels like we've asked all our questions of you anyway. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you so much.
Any other parting comments or questions on this subject before we move to the next item on the agenda? Okay. And that is additional public comment. There's nobody in the audience to comment, so we will not have additional public comment. And that brings us back to the planning calendar. And so the thing for us to think through is we know we have this map coming. The map could trigger some more public interest. That map may not be available in time for us to get that interest before we have our public hearing. I think we need to have our public hearing in January in order for us to make a recommendation to the council that they would consider in their second meeting in February, which gets them, if they were to act then, gets us done before that March timeline. It doesn't seem like we have any better options.
Yeah, and I can say too that the council can opt to have a public hearing as well. It's in the code. So if for some reason they feel like they need to allow further testimony on the record, they can do that. So,
I think it would help if we had another communication to our mailing list that explained to people that no matter where you live, there are these, our proposal has these ways for you to still accommodate some change in your property, even with the higher buffers.
yeah. And we are planning on, I will definitely reach out to the group just like I did before this meeting with the new code. And then I'm also planning on using our outreach newsletter. I don't know if everybody here is on that Amy sends out every other week. So we would use that to advertise this map as well, just to try to get the word out there. So that, and the social media networks as well. So hopefully that would help in addition to this. But yes.
Okay, so then in terms of the planning calendar, our January meeting, we would have a public hearing, we would vote on a recommendation. Wait, is that right? We would vote on a recommendation.
Yes.
Because then it goes to council. Council, that's too soon for them to receive it for their first meeting in February, so that the earliest they could take it up would be their second meeting in February.
We
And-
may tee it up at the, just so you know, we may have a discussion or a study session with them to get up to speed with where we are now before that second meeting, but we wouldn't do that. I think we would do that at the first meeting in February would be the soonest we would do that. So it would be like the week after our hearing.
Okay, so the study session would that be a meeting to which all commissioners were expected to attend, or would that be one to which they would have the option to attend or not to attend?
That would be optional. It would be, yeah, it would just really be to give them a briefing and get them up to
Okay,
speed.
so that would be the first Tuesday in February?
Yes, so that's the, ooh, that's a calendar. It would have been helpful if I put that on here. the 3rd, I believe.
Yes.
That's the 3rd.
So that would be something just to pencil in on your calendar if you want to be there. And those typically start at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock
Mm-hmm.
before the regular meeting.
And as soon as we know better, kind of what we're looking at, I can send everybody an update on the actual times. So,
And that would probably look like a presentation by you to them. They would ask questions. And then our role there would be to express our level of comfort or discomfort with it. So they're not going to, after a presentation in an hour, they're not going to be up to the same level of understanding that we're at. They're going to look to the people they know in this group and to say, Len, what do you think about this? And then that'll be the value that we deliver at that session.
and I'll double check. I mean, we probably won't know until we have the council sworn in. But I'll make sure I know if it's going to be a study session or during general business.
Okay, so getting back to the calendar generally, January, our meeting will be at its regular fourth Wednesday, January 28th. Then 5 days later, Tuesday the 3rd, if you wanted to attend that council study session, would be that next meeting.
Correct.
In the past, there has often been a joint meeting of the commission and the council to talk about their work plan, and it's been in January. It doesn't have to be in January, and the timing doesn't really favorable to having that kind of a discussion in January, so you could expect that will happen sometime later, time to be determined. Any other comments, thoughts on the calendar?
Just that, so in January, I'll be bringing a red line version of our nonconformance codes for everyone, so the rest of the nonconformance codes, not just with the critical areas. So we'll have that, and so we'll have that, and we'll have the public hearing that night. And then February, we would continue that discussion in theory. And if the council has a work plan for us, then we'll start on that, or we'll go back to working on small cells, or the sign code update. We do need to do those stuff, so. Before we get into downtown development.
Okay, we concluded our business on the agenda, but I do want to make a comment about our earlier conversations with Ms. Drange, and not really about her, but about how we conducted that, because there was some back and forth, and we tried not to have that back and forth, right? It feels very uncomfortable not to have that back and forth. We have a citizen there who's got a real problem. We care about that problem. We'd like to really have an exchange, but the rules of this meeting and the council rules and the rules of meetings like this everywhere don't encourage that. They don't encourage the director to give answers just like Aaron declined to give. They don't encourage us to have that dialogue. The rules are set up so that they speak, and then afterwards we can address that if we want, but it doesn't happen in real time. And I think that I don't think, from what I've read and maybe from the little I remember of what I read, is that the rationale behind that is that this is a meeting where we are conducting city business. And we can't conduct that business efficiently if we allow those interactions. The meeting goes off the rails, and government doesn't work. That's really the fundamental reason behind it. And we don't always, we operate kind of informally in this group because we can, because we're a small town, we have small audiences, and things don't go off the rails. But, so there's a tension there too, because we want to, and we sometimes violate our own rules. But that's sort of like the line that, that we need to walk as we handle those interactions. All right, with that, this meeting is adjourned.
Except for Jack.